This may surprise people that don't like my channel and disagree with some of the things that I've said in the past, but I actually have nothing against casual players. I have nothing against casual cards or casual decks or casual strategies. The only issue that I take that happens casually versus competitively is when people try to apply casual reasoning to competitive discussions. Most of my discussions on my channel are competitively oriented, so a lot of the times when people bring in casual viewpoints, that's where the issues sort of arise. But overall, I have no issue with people that play the game casually, and actually I think that they have a very important role in Yu-Gi-Oh's health. Because you see, while competitive Yu-Gi-Oh is very important, it's also a very small piece of the puzzle. I would say less than like 25% of Yu-Gi-Oh players actually go to events. The vast majority of players just play casually, whether or not that's on Yu-Gi-Oh Pro or just with their friends. Maybe they just play at school, but a lot of people just play this game casually and don't even know that the competitive realm exists. That's perfectly fine, and I personally play tons of games casually. I play Hearthstone casually and Overwatch and all sorts of games, and that's perfectly fine. I know that when I play those games, I'm not going into them with the same mindset that I go into with Yu-Gi-Oh! When I picked up Smash Bros. Ultimate, for example, I wasn't trying to break the meta, I wasn't trying to figure out the best character, I was just trying to play who I liked, whether or not it was Pac-Man or King K. Rool or any other characters. I didn't really care about a tier list like many other casual players, even in Yu-Gi-Oh! I just was trying to play what I enjoyed, and that's perfectly fine. In today's video then, we're going to talk about 5 awesome things about casual Yu-Gi-Oh! First off, at number 5, we have that there's no pressure when you play casual games. We've all seen that player that gets super salty and super angry during a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament, and I think a lot of us have been there as well. But one of the best things about casual Yu-Gi-Oh!, whether or not you're playing with your friends, or maybe you're just playing random opponents in between rounds at locals, is that there's not really any pressure. And the reason there's no pressure is because you don't really get anything for winning. And to some people that might sound like a bad thing, and I can see how you would take it that way, but take, for example, when I live stream Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. When I'm playing on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, I'm mostly just focusing on reading chat. I'm not really focusing on making the optimal plays 100% of the time. This leads to some misplays, sure, but the good news is that those misplays don't matter because Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro doesn't have a ranked mode, it's not for a tournament. Overall, I'm just putting that in the background as I answer comments and read you guys' questions, and that's one of the sort of perks of casual Yu-Gi-Oh! You don't have to worry about being successful every single game, every single round, because there's no real end goal other than just having fun. Number 4 is something that I call action to many times in videos where I talk about casual duels, and that's that a lot of the casual matches that people really enjoy are sort of these clown fiestas. Now, clown fiesta is a term that's used in a variety of card games and video games, but what it basically means is that when you play a casual game of anything, and especially Yu-Gi-Oh!, a lot of the times you see sort of crazy interactions, crazy setups, crazy monster like chain summons that you don't see in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Because a lot of the times in those casual matches, both players are playing much weaker decks than they would have played competitively, which means that those weaker decks actually get a chance to function when they're playing against decks of a similar skill level. This is cool because it makes every single game feel different from the last game, something that you might not always find in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! For many competitive players, we actually enjoy the fact that not every game is a clown fiesta, because when you're looking at a competitive sort of mindset, clown fiestas are really hard to plan for. You can't accurately test if every single game is completely different, so casual duelists can actually take advantage of the fact that there is so many random things happening. It makes it a lot more fun and makes the games a lot more diverse. At number 3, we have my personal favorite aspect of casual dueling, and something that a lot of competitive players take advantage of in their off time, and that's custom rules. Now, this can be in the form of custom ban lists. I think that's very popular, but also it can go a few steps further. So there are like the Pegasus challenges that we've seen in the past. Sometimes you might just throw in like all super rares in your deck or all commons in your deck, some sort of deck building challenge. We see a lot of those happen on Hard Leg Gaming's channel. He does all sorts of crazy stuff with custom rules, but some of the more happy memories that I have back in like 2015, I mean, there was one time, and I've talked about this a few times in videos, but there was a time when me and my friends were playing. I had a full shoot all deck and he had a full Brain Abyss deck, and what we did is we combined those two decks. We had the same sleeves, and then we shuffled it, pile shuffled it, and then randomly took out 40 cards, and that's the deck that we played with. We actually added on another rule to that made it even funnier, and that's that anytime that you picked up your deck, you had to only look at it for 10 seconds, otherwise you missed that search. This was made in order to prevent us from sort of looking through the deck and figuring out what we had, and there were some pretty hilarious interactions from there. Some players had just 2 Foolish Burials. I remember I think I had both Regekis, because there were some pretty funny things that happened because we sort of made our own custom rule set just for that one game, not something that we're spending a lot of time thinking about, and that's one of the excellent things and my favorite thing about casual duels. At number 2, I think we have a reason that a lot of people actually choose just to play casually in a variety of games, not just Yu-Gi-Oh!, and that's that casual Yu-Gi-Oh! Is much less expensive than competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, I actually have been a big defender of Yu-Gi-Oh! Not actually being nearly as expensive as a lot of people make it out to be. Sometimes I think of cards like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Yes, it is an expensive card, but if I think about how many months I've played that card since I bought my playsets, it ended up just being like $5 or $10 a month. However, I can't argue with the fact that many players just don't have disposable income, and that's perfectly fine. Maybe you play other games more competitively and that's where you put your income. Maybe you just don't have disposable income for games at all. Whatever the case may be though, in regards to Yu-Gi-Oh!, playing casually often means both players aren't playing with the newest decks or the newest staple cards, and that makes it a lot cheaper. You know, you have people just playing with structure decks, maybe structure decks and a couple packs that they bought. You don't really have people spending hundreds of dollars to actually play the game casually, and that is part of the appeal of casual Yu-Gi-Oh! If you don't have hundreds of dollars to spend on cards every single month or every couple months, casual Yu-Gi-Oh! Is for you, because you can pick up a deck that you played 5 years ago and you can play it casually against other players that are playing decks from 5 years ago. That's perfectly fine, and it's cool because a lot of times I see people that have been playing casually for like almost all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And a lot of times they pick up decks that they really like and they don't play them at maybe every single event, but they sort of have this sort of like briefcase, like Kaiba almost, of just casual decks that they like, and then when those decks get support, they can just add those support cards to their existing decks. Maybe not new cards like Pot of Desires when it was $70 or Ash Blossom when it was $70, but they add the new budget support to their older decks, and then that sort of strengthens those older casual strategies to play against their friends. And lastly, at number 1, I think one of the awesome things about casual Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that it's much easier to teach to newer players. I think that one of the issues with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that the barrier to entry is so high. I mean, there's so many different types of summons, and I know a lot of people when I say that, they think of just like links and pendulums and Xyz and synchros, but there's a lot more to Yu-Gi-Oh! Than just those. Even things like fusions and rituals and flip summons and special summons and tribute summons, it's pretty complicated for a player just getting into the game. And while it is true that many sort of players won't actually need to know all the summoning mechanics because they're not going to be using them right out of the gate, a lot of people that pick up the game, they just say, well, I just want to read the rule book. And what's interesting is that the game is so complicated, the modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so complicated that structure decks, I mean not starter decks, structure decks, not even just starter decks, the actual structure decks that are supposed to be more competitive than just starting out with the game, they don't even have the rule book, the full rule book in them, and I think that really goes to show that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is becoming too complicated. You can find the full rulebook online, but as far as a physical rulebook, they haven't printed those in years because there's too much to put in it, and that's not a good thing for newcomers to the game. So what's cool about casual Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe you just pick up structure decks that only have one summoning mechanic, maybe you pick up starter decks that only have one summoning mechanic, maybe you pick up speed dueling, something that's a little bit easier, maybe even dual links. Casual Yu-Gi-Oh! Tends to be a lot easier to teach to new players, and that's really awesome. The sort of thing that you're trying to do is teach someone the game from a ground up standpoint. Maybe they've never seen a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card in their life, and then after you play casually for a couple months, maybe then they sort of ask, well, what more is there to this game? Is there things more than just tribute summoning and special summoning? And maybe that's when you sort of look at the extra decks. But one of the cool things about casual Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that it doesn't just overwhelm people right out of the gate. You just give them a few mechanics to take a look at and play these simplistic decks, maybe with normal monsters even, and then eventually they move up their way to competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! If they want to, but a lot of players just stay in casual Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is perfectly fine. Anyway though, that is pretty much going to wrap up today's video. Hope that you guys enjoyed this discussion on 5 awesome things about casual Yu-Gi-Oh! I know that many of you, even the people that are fans of me, were probably surprised when they saw this in their sub feed, and yes, it's true. A lot of times I make fun of the cards that casual players really like Egyptian God cards or Chaos Max Dragon, and while I know that that can seem mean, the idea behind that is that it's supposed to make casual players sort of look into the competitive landscape and start analyzing their own strategies and say, would you like to become a competitive player? Maybe maybe you don't want to exist in a plane where Egyptian god cards aren't good, and that's totally your prerogative. You're allowed to do whatever you want to. If you don't want to play in a competitive Yu-Gi-Oh landscape, you don't have to. You can play your games against your friends with Egyptian god cards and take advantage of all the things I've talked about in this video. Perfectly acceptable. It's completely up to you guys. But I'll see you later. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Goodbye.